The On Target Institute presents a teaching from the Men on Target small group curriculum. Now with today's session, On Target founder Vince D'Acchioli.
How you doing, men? And welcome to our introduction from Module 2 of the Men on Target curriculum. Before we get into this curriculum, a couple of things I want to talk to you about. First of all, I want to encourage you again to download our handouts at otm.co. Go there and either the slide handout for all the slides we've been showing you or some handouts like we had for our review of Module 1 will be there. And just as a reminder, as we go back through and look at Module 1, we were dealing with understanding and living out godly character. How am I doing in the 6 stages for change? Seeking the God who is, not a God I want. How do I get to know this God? What does this God want? All of those kinds of things. Very, very important for us to rehearse those things. But let me use that as kind of a launch pad to tell you how this curriculum came to be and as a lead-in to Module 2. Very early on, we decided that our curriculum was not going to be a kind of a Bible study approach where we would go into the Bible and we'd take and just dissect one book or one verse at a time. As important as it is to do that, we felt that we wanted to keep it topical. We thought Jesus really didn't do a lot of Bible studies. He went to where men live, figured out their problem, and applied biblical truth to that problem. And that's kind of what separates On Target Institute from a lot of other teaching methodologies that are out there, we think. We believe it's very important to build one precept upon another. The idea that you don't teach advanced calculus to a first grader. You've got to get them there by processing things in a right order. And so Module 1 deals with the vision and the introduction to who this God is and the importance of knowing Him and how to get to know Him. And then when we move into Module 2, we begin by talking about the importance of overcoming our past. Here are the things we talk about, and then I'll review them. We talk about overcoming our past. We talk about dealing with the father wound and the key to a life of power. Now, I'll get to those in just a moment. But the idea of overcoming our past, let me camp there for just a second. I never realized the importance of the linkage between not dealing effectively with a dysfunctional past in order to determine, see, and live out God's future for my life. They are really attached much more powerfully than I ever imagined. In my own life, I have recognized by not dealing effectively with my past and the mistakes I've made and all the different things that have happened to me, it's been very hard as I'm focused on my past to see God's vision for my future. When I'm doing this in live audiences, I have a little fun thing that I do. I'll usually ask a couple to come out of the audience and stand on one side and the other of me and face me. And I'll typically turn to the woman and I'll say, now this represents my future, the beauty that God has for me that He wants me to see and all the wonderful things that He has planned for my future. And then I'll embellish that a little bit. Then I'll turn to the man and I'll say, I kind of have fun with this, by the way. I'll say, this is my past. It's pretty ugly, and we go on and the audience gets a good laugh out of that. But as I'm looking at the man representing my past, I want you to notice my body posture. As I am looking in this direction, I will never see God's future for my life. And that's kind of the way that linkage happens with not dealing effectively with our past. Now, as we get into this a little deeper, in the area of dealing with my past, I'm going to deal with 4 very powerful ideas. We need to deal with fear, anger, unforgiveness, and guilt. These are 4 very powerful principles that we're going to deal with. We're going to talk about where fear came from, going all the way back to the garden and the original curse that was placed upon the man and upon the woman. That's a powerful teaching all by itself. As a result of that curse, a man's greatest fear is that he's not going to be significant. His greatest fear is failure. A woman, however, very, very different because of the curse placed upon the woman. Her greatest fear is abandonment. Her greatest need is for security. And we'll kind of unpack that. And for many of you men, you'll kind of see how that plays itself out actually in your relationship with your wives, those of you who are married. So we'll deal with fear, and then we'll deal with anger. Anger really is nothing more than a mask for fear, but you must deal with these things in this area. If you look underneath what's going on with an angry person, usually you'll discover some underlying fear or insecurity that's not being effectively dealt with. And then we get into a huge one, unforgiveness. This is a major problem, especially in our culture today, and I believe one of the main reasons why we Christians are thought more of in our culture as a political movement sometimes than we are a spiritual one, because we violate what the Bible is trying to teach us in the area of unforgiveness. And then finally we deal with guilt, which is what happens as a result of not dealing effectively with fear, anger, and unforgiveness in the first place. Then, once we're done with those sessions, we're going to talk about the father wound. This is a huge area, guys. I've been in audiences where we'll have, 80, 90 guys, and I'll ask men to raise their hands if they've never had the father's blessing of their earthly dad, or didn't have a good relationship with their earthly dad. It is amazing how many men struggle with dysfunctional relationships with their earthly dads. And the result of that is the devil uses that to keep them from really discovering who our Heavenly Father is in the first place, and ultimately what He wants and how He wants us to live out our life. I've asked Dr. Clarence Schuler to come, and he's going to provide two powerful sessions. Clarence says, our fathers were wounded by their fathers, and they passed on this chain of pain to us. He goes on to say this: don't let the pain of your past punish your present, paralyze your future, and pervert your purpose, because you have a godly destiny. That's what Clarence would say. Then, our key verses for these sessions up front are found in Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. It says this: therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by such a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside, listen, every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. We're going to conclude this module by getting into a very important area for us men. It's called the key to a life of power. I believe there's a profound relationship between obedience and power. We're going to talk about how Jesus resisted the devil in the desert, in the areas of hunger, pride, and greed, all the areas we have a hard time resisting ourselves. We'll talk about that and the importance of, as Jesus resisted the devil, it says, angels came and attended him. Wow, I don't know about you guys, but I would love to have angels come and attend to me. But the major issue here is obedience. It's been said that the Apollo moonshot, and everybody remembers the Apollo moonshot, was off course 97% of the time. The only way the Apollo moonshot was able to ultimately hit its target was that along the way, Mission Control would have to fire off these little things called retro rockets. It would kind of get it back on course again. I like to think that obedience is the retro rocket for life, because, men, I want to tell you something. I don't know about you, but my life is on course, off course, I should say, at least 97% of the time. And obedience is the retro rocket for life. Am I willing to obey in this area and get my life back lined up again? Am I willing and am I able to do that? We're going to talk a lot about obedience. Oswald Chambers has a great quote. I remember when I read this, I thought, wow, this is profound. One of my favorite all-time quotes. He says this: God will not reveal more truth about himself until you will have obeyed what you already know. Wow, what a profound quote. Could it be that because we're not obeying what God has already revealed to us, that we're being kind of hamstrung from not being able to see God's unique plan for our future? Here's a powerful verse. Ecclesiastes 8:8 says this: no man has the power over the wind to contain it, so no one has the power over the day of his death. As no one is discharged in time of war, so, listen men, wickedness will not release those who practice it. And I don't know about you guys, but I have found that to be so true in my life. The more I enter into willful disobedience, the more God seems to back off And that wickedness at some point is going to catch up with me, and some of you men have already experienced that. Now, in keeping with our promise, what's the life implication and application for this session? Simply life implication, look, unless I'm able to let go of my past and learn to live a disciplined, obedient life, I will never discover God's purpose for me. Life application, here are some things for you to talk about. In Module 2, a reminder, we will be dealing with these issues. Letting go of our past, the father wound, obedience. Okay? Here are some things to think about. As you talk among the men in your group right now, number one, which of the areas above are you most needing help in? Share with the men in your group. You might say, look, I am really struggling. I was abused as a child, or I made this decision when I was younger, and I've kept it a secret, and I've not been able to let it go. Share openly with the men in your group. You're going to find guys in your group that maybe have struggled with the same thing. So what are the areas you need help in, and ultimately, obviously, why? Why do you think you need help in that area? And then finally, how will you prepare for this important module? And I want to really encourage you guys that now that you know what we're going to be dealing with, take these ideas to prayer every single day until we get through this module and say, Lord, I really need your help. Lord, I'm struggling with the area of obedience. I'm having a difficult time with staying away from the alcohol or pornography or whatever it might be that the devil's using to take you off your game. And pray about it every single day so that when that lesson comes up, ask God to really minister to you in a powerful way. And I promise you guys, He will. So, love you guys. I can't wait to get into this information with you. And until next time, listen, don't forget about it.